Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's session. My name is Danny, and I'm the event planner for the New York Reactor Space. Before we start, I have a few things to go over. Please take a moment to read our code of conduct. We seek to provide a respectful environment for both our audience and presenters. We encourage engagement in the chat, but please be mindful of your commentary, remain professional, and on topic. Useful links will be shared in the chat. The session is recorded and will be available on demand 24 to 48 hours on the Microsoft Reactor YouTube channel. Which brings us to today's session. It'll run for approximately 1 hour with time for questions throughout. I will now turn it over to our speaker for introductions.
All right, thank you so much, Danny. Welcome, everyone. My name is Johan Arwidmark. I'll be your host in this session. The session is about upgrading to Windows 11 using Microsoft Intune, some learnings, some notes from the field from tons of projects we have done over the years, hoping to give you some tips and tricks to have a smooth upgrade or deployment of Windows 11 using the Microsoft Intune platform. Myself, I have a background of 30-some years in consulting with everything systems management, pretty much. I'm currently an instructor also on the ViaMonstra Online Academy, and it's quite cool to see how the interest for Microsoft Intune has picked up just in the last 4 or 5 years. Today, just to give you an idea, we have about 5 times the amount of students signing up for Intune content compared to what we had maybe just a few years back. So this is a big interest for organizations using Microsoft Intune for systems management. And well, let's get into it. First, I'd like to mention, I absolutely love questions. So if you have any, like Anna said here earlier in the introduction, please use the comments field. I'll be happy to answer questions as we go by here. Good stuff. All right. So there are 3 pillars to this session. A bit around preparation or planning, things you need to do before you start to do Windows 11 rollouts or upgrades. Then some tips and tricks around the different readiness actions and solutions you can leverage in the Intune platform to make sure your devices have a good chance of being upgraded to Windows 11. And finally, some technical aspects and some controls and mechanisms you can do to improve the upgrade, basically trying to reduce failure rates and just making sure it goes as good as it possibly can go. I did notice that Annie shared also a few links here. I'll be sharing some scripts here in the end. They are already available in the comment section here. So thank you so much for helping out with that. Now, if we start to go into the preparation and planning phase, most of the customers I work with, because I work with organizations ranging from a few hundred devices to a few 100,000 devices. The most popular Windows 11 versions to upgrade using Intune is either Windows 11 Enterprise or Education. The benefit of those platforms is, of course, the richness of security features they have and also management capabilities. But Intune does support upgrading Windows 11 Pro as well. Another benefit of the Education and Enterprise versions is that you have longer support for them. They are supported up to 36 months versus the 24-month cycle for Windows 11 Pro. So if you have a chance, pick Education or Enterprise, depending on where you are in the world or what type of organization you're part of. That is a great version of Windows 11 to upgrade to. Now, regardless of Windows 11 version or edition, if you go to pretty much any hardware vendor in the world, HP, Dell, Lenovo, Microsoft themselves, you will find that they recommend that you upgrade to the latest BIOS and firmware versions when going to Windows 11, because that's the version they test with. And of course, Windows 11 has hardware, or how do I say it? It requires more from the hardware than Windows 10 did. So Windows 11, as you probably have found out by now, does require TPM version 2 on the device. It does require that you are in UEFI and have secure boot enabled. Otherwise, it will basically stop you from upgrading to Windows 11 on that device. The challenge is often that, all right, we need to figure out a way to make sure our devices are updated both BIOS and TPM, and that's something that Intune can help with, and I will come to that in just a little bit here. Same goes with drivers, and this depends a little bit on where you're going from and what you're going to. As an example, if you're going from Windows 11 22H2 to 23H2, that particular upgrade is just an enablement package. From a driver point of view, you typically don't have to do anything at all. But if you're going from an early Windows 11 to the latest one, currently 24H2, that's a larger jump. You may have to provide drivers for that version. And even more so, if you go from Windows 10 to Windows 11, you may have to provide drivers for that version or for that upgrade. And Intune can help with that as well. Also, content is coming down. When you do these full in-place upgrades driven by Intune, we are talking about 4 gig, 5 gig of content that has to come down to the devices. If you have a single device, well, that's one thing. But you have an office with a couple of hundred devices, you can definitely leverage peering capabilities built into the Windows 11 platform. Because back in 2013, this is a long time ago now, but Microsoft acquired a company called Pando Networks. They had a peering solution of content. That became delivery optimization in Windows 10, and that is still available in Windows 11. The challenge with that one is that the default configurations, well, put it this way, you can do a lot to improve them. And I will show you some tips and tricks how you can boost up your efficiency of peering or content to reduce the load on your WAN links, to reduce the load on your internet links when doing Windows 11 upgrades. So, all right. Going back to drivers for a second. About 2 years ago, Microsoft did an initiative. They added in a control plane to the Intune platform so that you can work with driver updates. And this includes firmware updates directly in the Intune platform. I happen to like to create policies per model that I have because I'm used to do that in all sorts of imaging capabilities I've been doing for the years, or OS deployment or whatever you do. But it's not a requirement. You can group devices together any way you like. I just happen to like doing it on a per model basis because that makes testing very easily. If you want to go next level, you can even have a pilot and a production for each model, because these policies here, they correspond to a group of those devices. That's how you assign things in Intune. But this allows you to control in a very controlled manner, make sure that your devices are updated on drivers and that they are updated on BIOS versions controlled by the Intune platform. Now, going back to settings, you can and should configure settings for delivery optimization in Intune. You'll be using the settings catalog because that platform or that set of device configurations has most options in Intune for delivery optimization. In this particular screen example here, I've applied my production settings to a group where I currently have 16 devices. And out of those 20-some settings that I configured, here are the top 5 ones. The trick when using peering for any type of delivery optimization content, it doesn't matter if it's Windows updates or if it's feature updates coming down from Intune or even applications coming down from Intune. These settings apply to all of that. You want to group machines that are well connected to each other. So if you have an office with maybe 2 networks or 2 subnets and a few hundred devices, they are often quite well connected to each other. But you may have another branch office in a different city, in a different country. They are typically not well connected to each other. So you want to group devices that are well connected to each other and making sure they can peer to each other, but you don't want to try to peer over WAN links, but that will just put another load or an unnecessary load on those links. So I do recommend to keep it to download mode 2. Mode 1 is default in Windows. 2, together with a group ID, is a better option for most scenarios. For Windows 11 clients, you can also restrict peer selection. You can optimize delivery optimization. And we have seen a massive increase of efficiency by allowing the NSD or that multicast discovery on the local network when using delivery optimization. So as long as multicast discoveries is allowed by your network team, you may have to check in with those. This is a great way to improve peering efficiency when downloading feature updates using Intune. There are also settings to delay foreground and background download, and that may sound like a not good idea, but it turned out to be a great idea. What these policies do for you, you're basically asking the client to look around for content locally a little bit longer before giving up and going to Microsoft and download the content directly from the CDNs out there in the world, the distributed content that is out there. But if you have an office, you want those devices to share content to each other. There is no point of having 300 devices all going out through the internet to download the same files. Not when you compare that content locally on a much better network. The same goes for the minimum background quality of service. If you put that somewhere in between 20 and 64, you will find that you're also bumping up the efficiency. And of course, if you want to, you can also throw in bandwidth throttling. That's not going to help much with efficiency, but that will also reduce the link or the load on the WAN links there. So when you do these settings, you will often see that peering efficiency will jump from, say, 10, 20% all the way up to 60 to 80%. And that's a big jump. And that's data where you are basically offloading from your WAN links. So highly recommend to do that one. All right, other options that are fairly newly introduced. Back in October in 2024, Microsoft announced a public preview of the Connected Cache, or the Connected Cache for Enterprise and Education, as the full name is. But it basically allows you to set up local cache servers, either on Windows servers or Linux boxes or Windows 11 clients. They will be responsible for caching content to all other machines in an office type setup. This is a free service to leverage. You use Azure to control it, but this solution no longer have any dependencies of Configuration Manager. That was the only solution in the past to do cache content for delivery optimization type downloads. But now you have this one instead. I've been running this successfully on Windows 11 clients as well. It runs as a container, Linux container on top of Windows, very effective, doesn't use too much resources, sure, a little bit of disk space, but that's pretty much it. So very useful to have. So this one you get from Azure, you go to the marketplace and you search for Connected Cache, and then you can add it to your subscription. All right. Now, what about preparation, readiness? Windows 11 and Windows 10 for that matter too, by default, there is a scheduled task, app racer task that runs every day, a 24-hour interval, that verifies if the device is capable of upgrading to a given version of Windows. This information is both in the registry, but it also gets uploaded to Intune, so you can use the readiness reports in Intune to check this information as well. More summarized and more beautiful, but still the information is there. So just to show you here, this is a registry from a machine, and you can see that this particular device, if I go back to that screen, I didn't mean to forward, you can see that for Windows 11 23H2, because these are just code name for Windows. So Nickel is the code name for both Windows 11 22H2 and 23H2. But you can see that one is green. There is no safeguard holes that will be listed here, but this is basically telling you that this device is ready to be upgraded to that version of Windows. And this version here is for Windows 11 24H2, same story there. It will also show green if the device is ready to be upgraded. If you want more details around the what basically made Windows think it could be upgraded, you can do that in here. The compatibility, sorry, wrong one. The compat markers will show you the details about that decision if you have it. Now, if you're going over to the Intune platform, this is the report I'm mentioning. You have to generate that report you have to select a target that you want to work with. In this case, I selected Windows 11 24H2. You have to select the scope. I selected the default scope. You generate the report, and then you get all the devices that you have enrolled into Intune. It will give you a readiness status for them. So here I can see that this particular machine, that machine can easily be upgraded to Windows 11. And I have a few devices that I already have upgraded to Windows 11. All right. So useful report to run, but this one is based on the previously explained upgrade experience indicators. Now, when you work with Intune to drive Windows 11 upgrades, you create feature update rings. They have a dependency of the deployment service, which also has some additional license requirements, Windows license requirements, usually an E3 or E5 license. But a device needs to be onboarded into that service first before it will be offered updates on the device itself. So that usually takes a little bit. It can take a day or two. So when you plan this, make sure though to enroll your devices into Intune, make sure they get the policies so they can also be onboarded into the deployment service. You have to accept those license agreements, and then those devices will be offered the feature update depending on how you configure your feature update rings. Now, in the Intune GUI or the Intune portal, the console, there are just a few options to configure feature updates. But there is another feature in Intune called remediations that can be leveraged to provide more advanced customizations on the Windows 11 upgrade process. So I will come to that very, very shortly. All right. So this is how you create the feature update ring in Windows 11. You can see that I gave it the name 24H2. I picked the version of Windows that I wanted to deploy. And in this particular case, I said that I wanted to have it available as soon as possible. But you can also go ahead and say, you know what, I want to have a specific date, or I want to have it gradually roll out over 2 different date periods here. Other options to configure these is to opt into Windows Auto Patch. It's a managed service that Microsoft offers that is part of the or available on the Intune platform. And when you do that, that service will create these update rings and policies for you. But there is absolutely nothing that prevents you from having this done by you as well. Or you can combine. You don't have to enroll every device into Auto Patch. You can have some there and some that you are doing manually. But what I am recommending is make sure you do your proper testing of your different hardware models, etc., because that will save you a lot of headache in the long run. All right. So I mentioned some advanced configurations. This file, setupconfig.ini, if you generate such file in your favorite editor, Notepad usually, and place it in a very specific folder in Windows, the feature update in Intune will use it. So if you want to provide more advanced settings to your upgrade, you can leverage this file to do it. And as you can see, you can either provide or even provide drivers into the mix here. So you can use a Win32 app in Intune that will just download drivers to a folder. And then you use this file to tell the update to use those drivers. As I mentioned earlier, mostly common when you go from 10 to 11, less common when you go from 11 to 11, but this is an option for you to customize it. You can also specify a location where logs files are created in case that a feature update doesn't work. And you can also put in batch files that in turn call PowerShell scripts usually to do things when the upgrade has completed. This is the equivalent of a setup complete CMD for basically a bare metal deployment. Now, the trick is, okay, how do we generate these files directly from Intune? Well, that's where the remediation come in place. You create a remediation that looks for the presence of this file in that particular folder, and if it doesn't exist, it goes ahead and creates it. And it doesn't just create that file, this particular script, it also creates a dependent script that you can leverage. So In the links that were shared here earlier, you will find these and a few other scripts. And what they basically do, they generate an entire folder structure that if it exists, if it's there before the feature update runs, you have more options to control that feature update. All right. Let me see if there are any questions coming in. I don't see any on the screen at the moment. Just want to make sure I didn't miss anything. All right then. That's all I had for today. Thank you so much for joining. And if you have any questions on this presentation, don't hesitate to reach out. I'm happy to answer any questions. I'm easy to find on social media and others. I have a very unique last name, about 10 people in the world, and I'm pretty much the only one working with Intune at the moment. But do reach out. And again, thank you so much for joining, and have a great rest of your day, everyone. Thank you.